There was either a single first hominid or several at the same time. For most of Earth's history, humans did not exist. The world turned without us, breathed without us, evolved without us. More than 7 million years ago, Africa was a changing, unpredictable, living continent. Dense forests alternated with open savannas. The rains came and went, the rivers changed their course, the lakes appeared and disappeared. Nothing was permanent. In that ancient world lived primates who did not know that they were about to begin one of the most complex processes in natural history. They were not human. They were not yet ammonids, as we imagine them today. They were animals adapted to trees, to balance, to life among branches. But the planet changed. The forests began to fragment. Open spaces grew, and some of those primates were forced to descend to the ground. It wasn't a conscious decision, it was a response to necessity. When coming down from the trees, the body had to adapt. Walking on two legs offered unexpected advantages. See further, free your hands, travel greater distances with less energy expenditure. But this transformation did not happen just once. For decades, science searched for a single ancestor, a clear first link, a foundational figure, the first hominid, the absolute origin. Today we know that that idea was incorrect. Human evolution did not begin with one, but with several. In different regions of Africa. At different times, multiple species emerged, each experiencing things in their own way, with new ways of walking, eating, and surviving. Some were small and light, others more robust and strong. Some retained distinctly ape-like features, others were beginning to vaguely resemble us. There was no clear line separating what was human from what was not. There was a huge gray area. For hundreds of thousands of years, several species coexisted without knowing it, sharing a planet that did not yet have a name for them. Each one represented a distinct evolutionary experiment. Some thrived for a time, others disappeared quickly. Some left offspring, others became extinct without leaving a visible trace. Evolution wasn't following a plan. It was testing possibilities. While one species developed a more upright posture, another perfected its ability to climb. While some began to change their diet, others specialized even more in what they already knew. The result was not a single, nascent humanity. It was a mosaic. A world where the concept of the first human simply did not exist. And yet, of all those life forms, only one story reached us. Africa. The laboratory of human evolution. Africa was not only the place where the first hominins emerged. It was something much more complex. It was a living laboratory for millions of years. The African continent was subjected to extreme climate changes, not slow and predictable changes, but abrupt cycles of humidity and drought, expansion and contraction of ecosystems in the same place at different times. There could be dense jungles, open savannas, and almost desert-like regions. This scenario forced species to adapt or disappear, and hominids were no exception. In this environment, several evolutionary branches emerged almost simultaneously. They were not separated by oceans or continents. Many coexisted within a few kilometers of each other. Some lived in wooded areas, where the trees still offered shelter and food. Others ventured out onto the open plains, where danger was constant and survival depended on observation and movement. Each group developed different strategies. Some retained long arms and bodies adapted for climbing. Others began to modify the structure of their hips and legs to walk long distances. There was no right way to evolve. There were only attempts. Diversity was the rule, not the exception. During this period, Africa was the only place on the planet where multiple hominid species coexisted. At the same time, no other continent experienced anything similar. It was a scenario of silent competition, not necessarily wars or direct confrontations, but competition for resources, territory, and adaptation to the changing environment. Some species thrived when the climate was humid, others when the climate became drier. When one weakened, another took its place. Evolution progressed through constant replacement. In this world, intelligence began to play an increasingly important role, not as an abstract ability, but as a tool for survival, remembering routes, recognizing dangers, anticipating predator movements, and identifying safe food. The brain began to grow slowly. Not all at once. Each small increase offered a minimal but cumulative advantage, an advantage that could mean living a little longer, reproducing a little more, and passing those traits on to the next generation. Thus, Africa became a map of evolutionary possibilities. In the East, some species began to show more efficient bipedalism than in the South. Others developed more robust bodies. Unique combinations of physical and behavioral traits emerged in different regions. There wasn't just one direction. There were many, and most of those routes didn't lead to us. They became extinct, not because they were weak, but because the environment changed faster than they could adapt. Extinction was not a failure. It was part of the process. Each species that disappeared made room for another. Each failed attempt helped define which features were truly useful in the long run. Africa wasn't creating humans, it was filtering possibilities and only a very specific combination. It managed to withstand all the changes, but we're not there yet. Millions of years will pass before something we can recognize as modern human appears. For now, the world remains full of different hominids. Walking, observing, surviving, unaware that only one of them will reach the present. The evolutionary bottleneck. Why did only one branch survive for millions of years? Africa was home to many species of hominids. But that diverse world would not last forever. The planet entered a phase of increasingly extreme changes. Temperatures began to fluctuate more intensely. Drought cycles became longer. The rains, more unpredictable, caused forests that had sustained life for thousands of years to disappear. The savannas expanded, and food sources became scarce. This was the beginning of the real evolutionary bottleneck. It was no longer enough to simply survive in a specific environment. Now we had to withstand multiple changing environments. Many species were unable to do so. The most specialized ones are those perfectly adapted to a single type of habitat. They were the first to disappear. Their bodies were efficient, but rigid. When the world changed, they couldn't change with it. Other species resisted a little longer, but eventually they too succumbed. Each extinction reduced the number of branches of the human tree. Diversity began to collapse. And in the midst of that collapse, one characteristic became decisive: flexibility. Not only physical, but also mental and social. The branch that survived was neither the strongest nor the largest. They was the one who could adapt the fastest. They could change her diet. They could modify her behavior. They could learn. The use of simple tools began to make a huge difference. They were not sophisticated weapons, but sharp stones, sticks, improvised objects. But these tools expanded the body's capabilities, allowed access to new foods, and reduced the risk from predators. Cooperation also became crucial. The groups began to organize themselves in a more complex way. They shared food with the younger ones, and they cared for the wounded. For the first time, survival ceased to be an individual effort. Communication became richer. Gestures, sounds, glances, signs. It wasn't language as we know it, but it was enough to coordinate actions. Those who could communicate better survived better, and those traits were passed on with each generation. The population was shrinking, but it was becoming more adaptable. This process was not quick. It happened over hundreds of thousands of years, but the result was clear. When the dust settled, when the weather had left its most chaotic phase behind, almost all the branches had disappeared. There remained one that was not perfect, not invincible, but extraordinarily flexible. That branch didn't know it was the last one. Just kept adapting. Over time it began to expand outside of Africa. He explored new territories. It faced unfamiliar climates and survived. Not because it was superior from the start, but because it learned to adapt. That's where true human history began, not in a single moment, not in one individual, but in a succession of adaptive decisions accumulated over thousands of generations. We come from many, but we are still few. The fact that we are here today is the result of an incredibly fragile chain of survival, and one only needs to imagine how many times it was on the verge of breaking to understand how improbable our existence is. This documentary is part of a saga. You can find previous and subsequent chapters on this channel. Rewrite our history.